Welcome. Good evening. Welcome to the Afro Latina Show. I am your host, Alicia Anabel Santos, La Diosa Dominicana, La Santera. Welcome. Welcome. Tonight we are on episode 97, titled Beginner's Luck. And this week we've been reading from The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And we are on part 2, page 53. So let's just get into it. The boy had been working for the crystal merchant for almost a month, and he could see that it wasn't exactly the kind of job that would make him happy. The merchant spent the entire day mumbling behind the counter, telling the boy to be careful with the pieces and not to break anything. But he stayed with the job because the merchant, although he was an old grouch, treated him fairly. The boy received a good commission for each piece he sold and had already been able to put some money aside. That morning, he had done some calculating. If he continued to work every day as he had been, he would need a whole year to be able to buy some sheep. "I'd like to build a display case for the crystal," the boy said to the merchant. "We could place it outside and attract those people who pass at the bottom of the hill." I never had one before," the merchant answered. "People will pass by and bump into it, and pieces will be broken." "Well, when I took my sheep through the fields, some of them might have died if we had come upon a snake. But that's the way life is with sheep and with shepherds." The merchant turned to a customer who wanted 3 crystals. He was selling better than ever, as if time had turned back to the old days when the street had been one of Tangier's major attractions. "Business has really improved," he said to the boy after the customer had left. "I'm doing much better, and soon you'll be able to return to your sheep. Why ask more out of life?" "Because we have to respond to omens," the boy said, almost without meaning to. Then he regretted what he had said, because the merchant had never met the king. "It's called the principle of favorability, beginner's luck, because life wants you to achieve your personal legend," the old king had said. But the merchant understood what the boy had said. The boy's very presence in the shop was an omen, and as time passed and money was pouring into the cash drawer, he had no regrets about having hired the boy. The boy was being paid more money than he deserved because the merchant, thinking that sales wouldn't amount to much, had offered the boy a high commission rate. He had assumed he would soon return to his sheep. "Why did you want to get to the pyramids?" he asked. "To get away from the business of the display." "Because I've always heard about them," the boy answered, saying nothing about his dream. The treasure was now nothing but a painful memory, and he tried to avoid thinking about it. "I don't know anyone around here who would want to cross the desert just to see the pyramids," said the merchant. "They're just a pile of stones. You could build one in your backyard." "You've never had dreams of travel?" said the boy, turning to wait on a customer who had entered the shop. 2 days later, the merchant spoke to the boy about the display. "I don't much like change," he said. "You and I aren't like Hassan, that rich merchant. If he makes a buying mistake, it doesn't affect him much, but we too have to live with our mistakes." "That's true enough," the boy thought ruefully. "Why did you think we should have the display?" "I want to get back to my sheep faster. We have to take advantage when luck is on our side and do as much to help it as it's doing to help us. It's called the principle of favorability, or beginner's luck." The merchant was silent for a few moments. Then he said, "The Prophet gave us the Quran and left us just 5 obligations to satisfy during our lives. The most important is to believe only in one true God. The others are to pray 5 times a day, fast during Ramadan, and be charitable to the poor." He stopped there. His eyes filled with tears as he spoke of the Prophet. He was a devout man, and even with all his impatience, he wanted to live his life in accordance with Muslim law. "What's the 5th obligation?" the boy asked. 2 days ago, you said that I had never dreamed of travel," the merchant answered. "The 5th obligation of every Muslim is a pilgrimage. We are obliged at least once in our lives to visit the holy city of Mecca. Mecca is a lot farther away from the pyramids. When I was young, all I wanted to do was put together enough money to start this shop. I thought that someday I'd be rich and could go to Mecca. I began to make some money, but I could never bring myself to leave someone in charge of the shop. The crystals are delicate things. At the same time, people were passing my shop all the time heading for Mecca. Some of them were rich pilgrims traveling in caravans with servants and camels, but most of the people making the pilgrimage were poorer than I. All who went there were happy at having done so. They placed the symbols of the pilgrimage on the doors of their houses. One of them, a cobbler who made his living mending boots, said that he had traveled for almost a year through the desert, but that he got more tired when he had to walk through the streets of Tangier buying his leather. "Well, why don't you go to Mecca now?" asked the boy. "Because it's the thought of Mecca that keeps me alive. That's what helps me face these days that are all the same, these mute crystals on the shelves and lunch and dinner at the same horrible cafe. I'm afraid that if my dream is realized, I'll have no reason to go on living." "You dream about your sheep and the pyramids, but you're different from me because you want to realize your dreams. I just want to dream of Mecca. I've already imagined 1,000 times crossing the desert, arriving at the plaza of the sacred stone, the 7 times I walk around it before allowing myself to touch it. I've already imagined the people who would be at my side and those in front of me and the conversations and prayers we would share. But I'm afraid that it would all be a disappointment, so I prefer just to dream about it." That day, the merchant gave the boy permission to build the display. Not everyone can see his dreams come true in the same way. 2 more months passed, and the shelf brought many customers into the crystal shop. The boy estimated that if he worked for 6 more months, he could return to Spain and buy 60 sheep, and yet another 60. In less than a year, he would have doubled his flock, and he would be able to do business with the Arabs because he was now able to speak their strange language, since that morning in the marketplace, he had never again made use of Urim and Thummim because Egypt was now just a distant dream for him, as was Mecca for the merchant. Anyway, the boy had become happy in his work and thought all the time about the day when he would disembark at Tarifa as a winner. "You must always know what it is that you want," the old king had said to the boy. "You must always know what it is that you want," the old king had said. The boy knew and was now working toward it. Maybe it was his treasure to have wound up in that strange land, met up with a thief, and doubled the size of his flock without spending a cent. He was proud of himself. He had learned some important things like how to deal in crystal and about the language without words and about omens. One afternoon, he had seen a man at the top of the hill complaining that it was impossible to find a decent place to get something to drink after such a climb. The boy, accustomed to recognizing omens, spoke to the merchant. "Let's sell tea to the people who climb the hill." "Lots of places sell tea around here," the merchant said. "But we could sell tea in crystal glasses. The people will enjoy the tea and want to buy the glasses. I have been told that beauty is the great seducer of men." The merchant didn't respond. But that afternoon, after saying his prayers and closing the shop, he invited the boy to sit with him and share his hookah, that strange pipe used by the Arabs. "What is it you're looking for?" asked the old merchant. "I've already told you I need to buy my sheep back, so I have to earn the money to do so." The merchant put some new coals in the hookah and inhaled deeply. "I've had this shop for 30 years. I know good crystal from bad and everything else there is to know about crystal. I know its dimensions, and how it behaves. If we serve tea in crystal, the shop is going to expand, and then I'll have to change my way of life. Well, isn't that good? I'm already used to the way things are. Before you came, I was thinking about how much time I had wasted in the same place, while my friends had moved on and either went bankrupt or did better than they had before. It made me very depressed. Now I can see that it hasn't been too bad. The shop is exactly the size I always wanted it to be. I don't want to change anything because I don't know how to deal with change. I'm used to the way I am. The boy didn't know what to say. The old man continued, "You have been a real blessing to me. Today I understand something I didn't see before. Every blessing ignored becomes a curse. I don't want anything else in life, but you are forcing me to look at wealth and at horizons I have never known. Now that I have seen them, and now that I see how immense my possibilities are, I'm going to feel worse than I did before you arrived because I know the things I should be able to accomplish and don't want to do so. It's good I refrained from saying anything to the baker in Tarifa," thought the boy to himself. They went on smoking the pipe for a while as the sun began to set. They were conversing in Arabic, and the boy was proud of himself for being able to do so. There had been a time when he thought that his sheep could teach him everything he needed to know about the world, but they could never have taught him Arabic. "There are probably other things in the world that the sheep can't teach me," thought the boy as he regarded the old merchant. "All they ever do, really, is look for food and water, and maybe it wasn't that they were teaching me, but that I was learning from them." "Maktub," the merchant said finally. "Maktub. What does that mean?" "You would have to have been born in Arab to understand," he answered. "But in your language, it would be something like, 'It is written.'" And as he smothered the coals in the hookah, he told the boy that he could begin to sell tea in the crystal glasses. Sometimes there's just no way to hold back the river. The men climbed the hill and they were tired when they reached the top, but there they saw a crystal shop that offered refreshing mint tea. They went in to drink the tea, which was served in beautiful crystal glasses. "My wife never thought of this," said one, and he bought some crystal. He was entertaining guests that night, and the guests would be impressed by the beauty of the glassware. The other man remarked the tea was always more delicious when it was served in crystal because the aroma was retained. The third said that it was a tradition in the Orient to use crystal glasses for tea because it had magical powers. Before long, the news spread, and a great many people began to climb the hill to see the shop that was doing something new in a trade that was so old. Other shops were opened and that served tea in crystal, but they weren't at the top of the hill, and they had little business. Eventually, the merchant had to hire 2 more employees. He began to import enormous quantities of tea along with his crystal, and his shop was sought out by men and women with a thirst for things new. And in that way, the months passed. The boy awoke before dawn. It had been 11 months and 9 days since he had first set foot on the African continent. He dressed in his Arabian clothing of white linen, bought especially for this day. He put his headcloth in place and secured it with a ring made of camel skin. Wearing his new sandals, he descended the stairs silently. The city was still sleeping. He prepared himself a sandwich and drank some hot tea from a crystal glass. Then he sat in the sun-filled doorway smoking the hookah. He smoked in silence, thinking of nothing and listening to the sound of the wind that brought the scent of the desert. When he had finished his smoke, he reached into one of his pockets and sat there for a few moments, regarding what he had withdrawn. It was a bundle of money, enough to buy himself 120 sheep, a return ticket, and a license to import products from Africa into his own country. He waited patiently for the merchant to awaken and open the shop. Then the two went off to have some more tea. "I'm leaving today," said the boy. "I have the money I need to buy my sheep, and you have the money you need to go to Mecca." The old man said nothing. "Will you give me your blessing?" asked the boy. "You have helped me." The man continued to prepare his tea, saying nothing. Then he turned to the boy. "I am so proud of you," he said. "You brought a new feeling into my crystal shop, but you know that I'm not going to go to Mecca, just as you know that you're not going to buy your sheep." "Who told you that?" asked the boy, startled. "Maktub." said the old crystal merchant, and he gave the boy his blessing. The boy went to his room and packed his belongings. They filled 3 sacks. As he was leaving, he saw in the corner of the room his old shepherd's pouch. It was bunched up, and he had hardly thought of it for a long time. As he took his jacket out of the pouch, thinking to give it to someone on the street, the 2 stones fell to the floor, Urim and Thummim. It made the boy think of the old king, and it startled him to realize how long it had been since he had thought of him. For nearly a year, he had been working incessantly, thinking only of putting aside enough money so that he could return to Spain with pride. Never stop dreaming, the old king had said. Follow the omens. The boy picked up Urim and Thummim and once again had the strange sensation that the old king was nearby. He had worked hard for a year, and the omens were that it was time to go. I'm going to go back to doing just what I did before, the boy thought, even though the sheep didn't teach me to speak Arabic. But the sheep had taught him something even more important, that there was a language in the world that everyone understood, a language the boy had used throughout the time that he was trying to improve things at the shop. It was the language of enthusiasm, of things accomplished with love and purpose, and as part of a search for something believed in and desired. Tangier was no longer a strange city, and he felt that, just as he had conquered this place, he could conquer the world. When you want something, all the universe conspires to help you achieve it, the old king has said. But the old king hadn't said anything about being robbed or about endless deserts or about people who know what their dreams are but don't want to realize them. The old king hadn't told him that the pyramids were just a pile of stones or that anyone could build one in his backyard. And he had forgotten to mention that when you have enough money to buy a flock larger than the one you had before, you should buy it. The boy picked up his pouch and put it with the other things. He went down the stairs and found the merchant waiting on a foreign couple, while 2 other customers walked about the shop drinking tea from crystal glasses. It was more activity than usual for this time of morning. From where he stood, he saw for the first time that the old merchant's hair was very much like the hair of the old king. He remembered the smile of the candy seller on his first day in Tangier when he had nothing to eat and nowhere to go. That smile had also been like the old king's smile. It's almost as if he had been here and left his mark, he thought. And yet none of these people has ever met the old king. On the other hand, he said that he always appeared to help those who were trying to realize their personal legend. He left without saying goodbye to the crystal merchant. He didn't want to cry with the other people there. He was going to miss the place and all the good things he had learned. He was more confident in himself, though, and felt as though he could conquer the world. But I'm going back to the fields that I know to take care of my flock again, he said to himself with certainty. But he was no longer happy with his decision. He had worked for an entire year to make a dream come true, and that dream, minute by minute, was becoming less important. Maybe because that wasn't really his dream. Who knows? Maybe it's better to be like the crystal merchant, never go to Mecca, and just go through life wanting to do so, he thought, again trying to convince himself. But as he held Urim and Thummim in his hand, they had transmitted to him the strength and will of the old king by coincidence, or maybe it was an omen, the boy thought. He came to the bar he had entered on his first day there. The thief wasn't there, and the owner brought him a cup of tea. I can always go back to being a shepherd, the boy thought. I learned how to care for sheep, and I haven't forgotten how that's done. But maybe I'll never have another chance to get to the pyramids in Egypt. The old man wore a breastplate of gold, and he knew about my past. He really was a king, a wise king. The hills of Andalusia were only 2 hours away, but there was an entire desert between him and the pyramids. Yet the boy felt that there was another way to regard his situation. He was actually 2 hours closer to his treasure. The fact that the 2 hours had stretched into an entire year didn't matter. I know why I want to get back to my flock, he thought. I understand sheep. They're no longer a problem, and they can be good friends. On the other hand, I don't know if the desert can be a friend, and it's in the desert that I have to search for my treasure. If I don't find it, I can always go home. I finally have enough money and all the time I need. Why not? He suddenly felt tremendously happy. He could always go back to being a shepherd. He could always become a crystal salesman again. Maybe the world had other hidden treasures, but he had a dream and he had met with a king. That doesn't happen to just anyone. He was planning as he left the bar. He had remembered that one of the crystal merchant suppliers transported his crystal by means of caravans that crossed the desert. He held Urim and Thummim in his hand. Because of those two stones, he was once again on the way to his treasure. I am always nearby when someone wants to realize their personal legend, the old king had told him. What could it cost to go over to the supplier's warehouse to find out if the pyramids were really that far away? And scene. Oh, shoot. We about to journey, family. I am so happy to be reading The Alchemist again. So what jumped out for me? One of the last things I read, when Santiago says, on the other hand, I don't know if the desert can be a friend, and it's in the desert that I have to search for my treasure. If I don't find it, I can always go home. What does that remind you of? What does that make you think of and feel? It's this idea that it's this fear of the unknown, right? We don't know what taking that step or that leap of faith where it will take us, submitting that essay to be published, putting ourselves out there, taking risks, taking chances, being fearless, going to that dance class, taking that acting class, enrolling in that voice class, learning to play that instrument, picking up that camera and starting to take photos, going back to college to get that bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, applying for that job, finishing that cover letter. We fear the unknown. We're so afraid of rejection. We're so afraid of failing that sometimes we don't even want to begin. I love the conversation between the boy and the merchant and the crystal salesman. The crystal salesman. You know, that one part in the narrative where Paulo writes, when he was complaining about being robbed and, that the king hadn't warned him about certain things. But the old king hadn't said anything about being robbed or about endless deserts or about people who know what their dreams are but don't want to realize them. These are the people that live with regret and believe that it's too late. The old man believes that it's too late for him to get to Mecca. He has the money now. He was incredibly successful, so there was nothing holding him back. Right? There's nothing holding him back but himself, right? We get comfortable. We get comfortable in our surroundings. What else jumped out for me that I wanted to talk about that I loved? Maktub. Yeah, back, just kind of like to reiterate what the merchant said, I don't know how to deal with change. And that's the thing, change is really scary. The unknown can be scary. So what did we learn? What did we learn? What did we learn? I think for me, one of the special gifts about this story is all that can happen and all that is to be discovered when you go after your dream, right? And so this idea of beginner's luck, and whether or not we believe in that, do we believe in beginner's luck? I know that I believe in fate. I believe in timing. I believe in being ready. I believe that opportunities come up and there are amazing blessings that happen, when we least expect it. But I don't believe in luck. I believe that things align because you've done the work, right? Beginner's luck is like, they just did something effortlessly and it got handed to them, and they don't have to put in much work. I don't believe in that. I believe that fate, there are, for some people, some things do come easily. Is that luck, or is that just their blessing at their time? And so I would never want to shit on someone's blessings as, that was just beginner's luck. The luck of the draw, they won the jackpot. For me, I believe in hard work and timing and alignment, being in the right place at the right time. There are people who have been rejected, who have completed books that have not ever been published, but they keep writing. Paulo talks about enthusiasm, this enthusiasm. He talks about it in the book, but he also talks about it in his talk with Oprah in Super Soul Sunday. Being enthusiastic about the thing that it is that you want. Are you doing it because you want to be famous, or are you doing it because you love it and there is nothing else in the world that you could see yourself doing? If there is something that you are not doing in your life and you're feeling empty, it's because you are not chasing your legend. I love that Paulo says we all know what that personal legend is for us. We all know it. It's just very few of us are courageous enough to go after it and chase it. It takes a tremendous amount of courage and enthusiasm to stay with it when no one is listening or reading your work. You're just building and building and building, and you're just creating a body of work. I'm creating a body of work. I am creating something that after I leave this place, even if it's my daughter and granddaughter and great-granddaughter, there will be things that I have left as a roadmap into my soul. Will they be able to come back and visit and communicate with me? They will have journals filled of Abuela Alicia's writings. Because I love doing what I do. And so with that, let's meditate. Let's talk about beginning today and doing what we love. Let's inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. What would you love to do today? What would you love to do today? You're seeing other people do it. You're going on Instagram and you're throwing shade because you see someone and you know that it's envy. You don't like someone who's chasing that dream that you want on the low to chase, and you're hating on them and you're sending them bad vibes because you're afraid to do it. Why are you mad? Because they're out there living. Why are you throwing out hate when all you have to do is pick up the pen and write? Turn on that video camera and spit a line. No one is going to give you permission to do it. What is it that you would love to do, that you are seeing other people doing, that you could use them as examples and say, damn, I want that. I'm just going to do it. And you're not worrying that it's already been done, because there are millions of dancers and singers and writers and there are people doing things. Speakers, motivational speakers, healers, podcasters, radio DJs, whatever. Many people are doing the thing, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. If you were born with a gift to do something, go. When you're ready, come out of meditation. My hand's feeling better. I haven't picked up a pen. Well, I did. I picked it up to write a dot in the book today. My loves, I'm wishing you an amazing day. That phone ringing is my date. I'm going out. Freaky Fridays. Have an amazing evening. Peace. Yes.